All right, Brent's turned it on. So now we're recording.
Oh, okay.
Next thing is Brent's got to give me the meeting. It's been a nice day today, hasn't it?
It has been lovely. My flowers love it. And I actually did sit out on the deck, so that was nice.
Yeah, that sun felt good.
Yes. Yesterday, Benjamin and Teddy, they took me on a ride. On Fridays, they let me go riding in a car.
Yeah. Claire, this is a picture you mentioned before. You knew everybody in it. I didn't realize until just now that on the back of it, that's Aunt Margaret's handwriting.
Yeah, that's Aunt Margaret's handwriting.
She said, Tyree family reunion about 1935.
I knew it had, see, I wasn't born till 47. That was even before Mer Flagg was born. She was born in 40.
Yeah. That's pretty cool.
I don't remember seeing all 9 of the surviving Tyree siblings.
They're all there. And my grandma Horde is in a darker dress down in the front row.
Yeah, she's next to Mama.
Yeah, that's on Helen. It's
side of Grandma.
Yeah. And then the back.
And on the back is Uncle George, Aunt Edna, Aunt Margaret, Uncle Owen, Uncle Jake, and Uncle Ben.
Yeah, that's pretty cool. That's pretty cool.
It is, because you get pictures of some of them, but not all of them.
Yeah, I got one in a minute. In fact, I'll flip back to it. This plaque comes from a book that I found upstairs, and I don't think Grandma Horde, my Grandma Horde made this. I'm sure somebody did this for her. 1987.
How about that?
What I want to show
yeah,
you,
that's old kind of books. The pictures didn't last very well.
No, I want to show you one though. I've taken up the country. Let me find it. Hold on.
Okay.
Doggone it, where is it? I will find it eventually because I wanted to show it to you. It's taken in the kitchen up the country. Here we go. There you go. That's Grandma Tyree. And I think that's George.
That's Mama and Mer Flagg.
Yeah.
And
that's Mer Flagg right there.
That's Mer Flagg. That's Mama. And Libby and Tom are in the front.
Yep.
And then Grandma, and I can't see who the guy is. Who is that?
That looks to me like George.
Okay. Yeah, it kind of sits like Uncle George did.
Yeah. Yep.
Yeah. And we were trying to guess because of Mer Flagg's age. There's a good possibility I was there, but I was in utero. I think Mama was pregnant with me when they did that. Because that was in the right age for Mer Flagg.
Yeah. Michael, this is a picture of your picture of your great grandpa Horde in his post office uniform. And I'm not sure who this is. I bet this is Grandma Horde.
Looks like her.
Yeah. And this is a Grandma Horde, probably carrying, that's probably Libby, Larry, and Diddy, I bet you.
No, who's next on Mildred?
Yep.
Who's the lady next to her?
Now this is, trying to get the glare out of the way. Daggone it, quit. There we go. Now this is a probably about 1930, I'm guessing. I don't know where they are. But I know one thing, my grandpa Howard really does favor my dad. These pictures are reminding me of that.
I love that coat. I love that coat that Aunt Mildred has on. It's beautiful. See the fur?
Yeah. Yep. And this is, I think that's Grandma Tyree. She must have come up to Richmond for some reason.
She looked really not much though.
No. But that's Grandma Howard holding my daddy.
Almost looks like a baptism or something.
Yeah. And this must be in the backyard of camp or something.
Yeah.
I remember Daddy telling me that his father loved camping, like to go out in the woods and camp. Now this dress or this hat, there are pictures of Grandma Howard wearing this hat at a funeral. I'm guessing my grandpa Howard's funeral, but that hat's pretty distinctive.
I was going to say she had that when he was buried.
Yeah, that's taking up the country.
Yep. Behind Aunt Mildred is the door.
Yeah.
That went to the original part of the house.
I'll say Elga's in there watching with Mike.
That door right behind her.
Yep. In this picture, there's somebody driving this car. I can't make out who it is. But it must have some significance in the family, but I don't know who it is.
Yeah.
And this is some of the buckrow stuff. We've seen a bunch of buckrow pictures. Growing up, they must have gone to the beach a lot.
This was our vacation, the poor man.
Yeah.
The buckrow.
That's Daddy and Libby. And Grandma.
That was before Aunt Mildred got her horrible sunburn and never went again without a long sleeve shirt and men's pants.
I didn't know
she
that.
got the sunburn.
The two in the middle are Daddy and Libby. I don't know who's on the outside.
I can't tell either.
And this is Grandpa Howard right here.
Is that Libby beside her?
Yes.
Okay. So Libby looks to be about what?
We've looked at this
12
picture.
or so.
That's Libby on a tractor up the country.
Yep.
Now this picture, Claire, I think this picture this one is taken upstairs in y'all's house. I think that's Grandma Howard sitting at her pedal sewing machine upstairs in y'all's house, but she lived above you guys.
Are they columns behind there?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think that's y'all's house upstairs.
Maybe. I know she had a sewing machine up there. Aunt Mildred always sewed.
Yeah. I've got that sewing machine upstairs in my bedroom.
How about that?
I sure do.
You remember at the hallway at the head of the steps? That's where your grandma's dining room table was.
Yes. Blair and I used to, when we spent the night with Grandma up there, we used to sit at this window and look across to the light at the top of MCV. It was a red beacon. We used to stand there in that window and look out. I think then this is a picture in front of y'all's house, Claire. That's Grandma.
Yeah, that's the side that our house was on. Our house
Yeah, and
was open like that.
that bay window I was just talking
Right
about a moment ago.
Mildred's head.
See this bay window I'm touching?
Yeah. See
That's
that roof
this bay
right
window.
there above their heads? I was 18 months old. I went out that window naked.
Did you really?
Uh-huh. Scared the
Great.
whole neighborhood.
Oh, I bet. I bet. I don't know who that baby is.
I don't either. Look at that. That probably, if it had been anybody, been Murph Flagg.
Okay. And this is a picture up the country, and I'm not sure who all these people are, Claire. Maybe the
Hey, you know Grandma.
yes.
Excuse me. Aunt Maddie is next to her.
Okay, now who is Aunt Maddie?
And I can't see the others well enough because the pictures are not as big when it's all of us on here.
Yeah.
I
Well,
can't.
beside Aunt Maddie is Aunt Margaret, and then my grandma Horde is in the middle.
Well, that would have been Buster, wouldn't it?
Yes.
In his uniform?
Yes.
Then I think Aunt Mildred is the head. Oh, that's Aunt Margaret on the other side of Aunt Maddie.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that's Aunt Margaret right here.
Yeah. And Aunt Mildred is between Aunt Maddie and Grandma.
Yes. Now, what's Aunt Maddie's relationship to Grandma Tyree?
Aunt Maddie,
Yes.
she was Grandma's sister and the closest sister. They were tight, tight, tight.
Okay. Okay.
She came to the country every year and stayed 2 months. Her husband died young, and she came and stayed up the country every year. She was still coming when I was there in the summer.
I remember her too.
She lived in Norfolk,
Okay. Okay.
and there was a cousin, I don't really know, Ori, that lived in Pinhook before you get to Glade Hill where we turned.
Yes.
In Pinhook. And she was some kin to Aunt Maddie, but Aunt Maddie always came and stayed with her too. She was
Okay.
younger than Grandma and Aunt Maddie.
All right. Now, this picture is another picture from up the country. I think
Lord, it looks
that's
like
Aunt
they
Margaret.
got the garden.
I think that's Aunt Margaret.
Looks
My
like
mom
Aunt
is-
Margaret on the end.
Yeah, that's Aunt Margaret right here.
Yeah.
And that's my mom right there. I'm not 100% sure who this is.
Can you get it in closer?
That's close I can get, Claire.
Okay. Okay. I can't really tell. It might have been Lucy Mary.
Well, that's possible. It's not Libby.
No. I don't know who. I can't tell from that.
Hey, Aunt Claire,
Uh-huh.
when you look at the top right of your screen, does it say gallery view or does it say speaker view?
It says record, REC,
Top right or top left?
top right.
What's it say in the top
Nothing
left?
on here showing.
Yeah, you should have if you've got the gallery view where it's a small window for everybody, there should be a button you can press that does speaker view and it'll make Steve's screen the biggest.
I've got a little red thing that says REC. That's it.
Yep. Huh. You put your finger kind of in the top
Who's that?
right. You're on an iPad, right?
Yep, just a little red oval.
Okay.
Claire,
I have
this lady
no
beside
idea.
Grandma Horde, I don't recognize who this lady beside Grandma Horde is.
I'm trying to think of anybody that was that heavy set.
There was a lady who used to live across the street from Grandma Horde's brick house.
Oh,
Uh,
okay.
I can't think. I think her name was Miss Nellie. That may
Yeah,
be who it is.
I remember the name, but I don't remember the person.
Yeah.
And that's Aunt Mildred with her,
Yes.
standing there.
This is Grandma, probably at Bryan Park. See somebody sitting in the background of the picnic table?
Oh, yeah. You know, we used to go there all the time and have picnics.
Yeah, had family picnics out there. Sure did.
We would meet Bobby and Irma Parcell out there. Have
Yep.
big picnics.
Yep. This is at the cemetery, and I'm
Look
standing
at
up, and that's Larry right in front of Grandma Horde.
Oh, look at that.
Yep. That'd be
Oh,
about
you all were so cute.
that'd be about
Look at
1954, 55, something like that.
Great grandma. Uncle
You were
Steve,
not
it says
in-
April of 55.
Yep.
Larry could get by with a whole lot more than you did, Steve.
Yep.
Yeah, he would look real innocent, and we all loved him. We didn't care what he did.
And there's
Look
Larry.
at that. Look at that.
Yep. And here's I don't know these ladies. I know that's Grandma Horde right there, but I don't know these other ladies.
One of them looks like Willie Parcell's wife, Eva.
All right.
That looks, this lady in the dark with the white collar, like,
Yeah.
that looks like, you heard them speak of Billy and Ann Parcell. Billy was so good to them.
Yes.
When Uncle Otis got sick, that
Yep.
was Billy's mother.
Okay.
And I used to go over and play in the creek because they had cousins that were my age, and they would come from Roanoke, and
Yep.
I'd go over and spend the day.
And these are more recent pictures. That's going up to David's graduation.
Oh, when we flew.
Yep. Yep. Grandma was making it.
Grandma Horde did not know
That's
she
right.
had cancer when we left to go on that trip. We all knew, but she did not, because STL and Busta did not want to ruin her trip.
Yep.
And we
That's all
worried
grand.
that she was going to get lightheaded flying. She sat next to the window and looked down. Oh, look at all
Wow.
of that.
Wow. And here's another picture of a family outing. Is Robert eating, Mom and Daddy, David, and Grandma.
I'm guessing if that's with those pictures when we went to the graduation, that
Possible.
is the restaurant where David
probably right.
worked.
That's
And
probably
it was
right.
called David's Restaurant. David played the piano, waited tables. He did whatever he could make money with. And
Okay.
they had us to dinner and gave us a bottle of wine. And Aunt Mildred pursed her lips because we drank it.
Yeah, I'm
What's
sure
she
that
did?
one will be.
Hey, what did my mama do?
Well, she was very quiet. None of them.
Yeah, I was gonna say.
Your dad was. But Aunt Mildred got the look.
Yeah.
But Merflag and Aunt Margaret and I had a glass of wine.
Yep. That's all the pictures I got tonight. But let's talk a little bit. I'm gonna move in and sit down. Clay, kind of what I was hoping you might get us started by just talking about 3 areas that would be nice to cover tonight. One is to talk about the history of the farm as we knew it up at Rose Lane, what it was back in the day, and what led it to get to be what we remembered. Then talk a little bit about what you can describe of Grandma Tyree and Grandpa Tyree, like when he was commissioner of the revenue and used to bring people home for lunch, all unexpected, overnight guests, and fox hunting. And then if we have time, talk a little bit about your summers up there with Aunt Margaret, where she did stuff with you. Let's do those
Okay.
three things tonight. Just maybe anybody else on the phone that can add in, go ahead and pitch in. But let's
Well,
talk about the plantation.
the farm itself, by the time that Grandpa and Grandma got it, it was about halved. And half of it was over 500 acres to begin with. And you know where Chestnut Church is? That was kind of where the farm stopped. And all around the house, the Walter Woody house, that was Grandpa Tyree's home place. And when he was about 8, we figured, his father died. He was in the Civil War, and he died with pneumonia. They called it exposure. And he came home on a horse, never knew how he got there. He couldn't remember, he was so sick. And he lived about 7 days, Aunt Margaret said. They weren't for sure, but about 7. And so that was the reason there were only 2 children, only Grandpa and Aunt Molly, who was his sister. And his mother never married again. Because back then, if she had married, her husband would have gotten, whoever she married, they would have gotten her land. She would not have been allowed to keep it. Women could not own land. So she never married again, and she could neither read nor write. Girls didn't go to school. And so that always, Aunt Margaret said, she felt like that was why Grandpa Tyree was so kept on education, because his mother couldn't read or write. But she had this wooden 12-month slot in her kitchen, and she kept up with how to pay things and keep up with her personal and business things by slotting them. She couldn't read it, but she knew where the slot was. And so they lived on there, and when Grandpa married Grandma, he got the land from the Aunt Sue Houston house, which the road that goes down by the shop barn, when you get to the end of that and you can't go any further, the house that was there, I doubt if it's still there, that was the Aunt Sue Houston house. And that marked where Grandpa's land started and Aunt Molly's land.
Claire, was that the house that had 1804 in the chimney?
Had what now?
1804 in the chimney, and a rock was 1804 Ashton.
It had a rock chimney. We used to go down there, walk down there.
Yeah.
Because on the other side, on the land that was Aunt Molly's, that's the original Tyree Cemetery.
Okay.
That, and it's over on Trinkle Woody's. I'm not lying. Trinkle Woody's land. Because
I'll be done.
When Aunt Molly married, she married somehow into the Woody family, and that land became Woody. And you can go down near his house and you go over in a field. Some people have been, didn't y'all go and clean it, Larry?
I don't know whether we did or not. I don't remember doing that.
I remember this house being
family members who went and cleaned it occasionally, because it gets overgrown. It's just out in the middle of a field.
Right.
And we did not go a whole lot. I don't know how far it went back. If Hiram Tyree was there, I would assume Grandpa and his mom and dad, I think, are at the cemetery at the head of the lane. I know grandma's parents, the Laws were, but that old one was the one that was the original.
I didn't know that.
Yeah.
That
And
house.
people used to come, Aunt Margaret would take them over there, would come looking up history, and she would take them over there to see it.
That house I remember was a log house.
Huh?
That house we're talking about, I vaguely remember it being a log house. It had clappers on it, but it was originally a log house.
It was a log house, and it had a rock foundation and a rock chimney. But we never went around it a lot because it was already getting in bad shape.
Yeah.
When I was.
How did the store come to be get up there? That was originally Tyree land, wasn't it? You know, the country store?
It was, but along through the years, if you wanted to get a little extra money, you sold a little land. And the Mitchells did not have land. And they bought, it's kind of like a triangle. And that was where they had a house and the store. And then when you were at the shop barn, that was a road that went behind that shop barn. That was the kind of the break between the little part of the land they sold the Mitchells and the farm was. But the church land where Beulah Baptist Church and cemetery was built, that was Tyree land.
Okay. Did Grandpa Tyree donate that church land?
They donated the land, and they donated the land on the opposite side of the road where they built the parsonage.
Yep.
And then when Aunt Margaret died, there was another strip of land between the parsonage and the cow pasture.
Yes.
And she donated that in case they ever needed it for a parking lot.
Okay.
So I was also told that one of the Grandpa Tyrees donated the land for the Primitive Baptist Church was across the road as well.
That would have been within their land. I don't know how far it went down there, but Grandpa and Grandma, they did not join the Primitive Baptist Church until after Mama and them were born. Because Mama said she went to the baptism right across from the church. When you kind of go down the hill, there's a bridge, and they were baptized underneath that bridge. And Mama and Aunt Blanche and Aunt Margaret thought they were going to drown them, and said they screamed and cried. They were just scared to death their mom and daddy were going to get drowned. But the only one of the children who ever really joined that church was Uncle Owen. All the rest of the children belonged to other churches. And Aunt Lulie, Uncle Owen's wife, they had grapevines, and they made the wine that Chestnut took communion with.
I didn't know that. How about that?
It was called sacrament wine, not sacrament. It was sacrament wine. And Murph Flagg said she and Lucy Mary they would be playing, and Aunt Lulie would make the wine. And she said she and Lucy Mary would grab a glass and go outside and drink it. So, but you could make sacrament wine even during the Prohibition.
Talk a little bit about what you remember, the stories of great Grandpa Tyree, his commissioner of revenue, and being kind of a political person that invited people to come out and spend time at the farm and stay overnight and all that kind of stuff.
Well, Uncle, as far as I know, the grandpa was a very gregarious, shaking hands, kissing babies kind of person. And he went into business with the Banner Warehouse, which sold tobacco. And they would have auctioneers come in, and you would have a round thing. I went to market one time with Uncle Otha, and you put your tobacco, and people could see how much the quality of it was. And then they bid on how much you brought to it. And that's what you did. But Grandpa's warehouse was right downtown in Rocky Mount. And Rocky Mount was pretty much owned by a family, the Angle family. They were wealthy. They controlled the mayor, all that stuff, the bank, you name it. And so Grandpa was in the warehouse, and he also ran for Commissioner of Revenue. So he had 2 jobs. And they didn't have tons of money. They had too many children to do that, but they did get along, and Aunt Margaret and Grandma Tyree sewed. They made clothes and things. But Grandpa loved to entertain. And when they had church only one weekend a month at Chestnut, and they had it Friday night, Saturday evening, and Sunday. And Grandpa would get up on Saturday afternoon and invite, open invitation. Anybody who wanted to could come back to Rose Lane, park their horses, get them put into the stable and fed, and Grandma they would have these meals, these huge meals. Grandma never got to go to, she never got to go to church because she was always cooking. And there would be 40 or 50 people, and they didn't have enough beds. But what they did was, you know what ticking is? It's a material that has a line, like stripes. They used to make pillow cases out of it. They would take those big mattress looking things and stuff them with clean hay. And everybody would have a clean bed to sleep on. Grandma had washed all the things so you wouldn't get bed bugs. And they would just come back and stay there. Grandma would make cakes and pies, like 10 or 12 cakes, pies, you name it. She had food, chickens. Grandma would go out in the backyard where the chicken house was, and Grandma would pick out the chicken. She'd pick it up, and she'd swing it and break the chicken's neck. And then she'd put it on the stump, and she would whack its head off, and then they had to pluck it. And that they raised chickens and hogs, and they didn't have, they had always some beef cattle, not like after when Uncle Otha was doing it. But it never fazed Grandma. They said she just cooked. Now, she had help. There was Colored Liz was there. She lived at the house, and she helped Grandma cook. And the girls that were old enough, but see, by the time Mom and them came along, Aunt Mildred and Aunt Edna were gone. They had moved to Richmond in West Virginia.
Oh, okay.
But Grandpa would have hunts, fox hunts, big deal. Every now and then they had coon hunting, but fox hunts were the very social, political thing to do. And Grandma would bake fresh loaf kind of white bread you'd slice, and she would make 15 and 20 bushels of loaves of bread for the dogs to eat, the hunting dogs. And she would make all this lovely food. And then when it was time to eat lunch the day of the fox hunt, she would go up and put on this black, very formal looking dress. It had a ruffle kind of, and she had a top hat that had black net, and it would come around and tie under her chin. She rode English side saddle, and she had leather gloves, and she would sit. She had wonderful posture, and she would sit very straight, and she would ride out to where they were. She could hear them, the dogs and all barking, and she would go and announce that lunch was served. So they really did have a nice social life. Of course, Grandma worked herself to death, but Grandpa loved it.
Claire, somewhere upstairs, I've got a picture of Grandma Tyree sitting in that regalia on a horse.
Uh-huh.
Sure enough.
Yeah,
She's
and
in saddle.
and it wasn't a workhorse. It
No.
was a ride horse. All
No,
my
this was-
life, we only had workhorses.
Now, this
But-
horse was a fine animal. Sure was.
Yeah, it was a good horse. But Grandma loved having people. I mean, that was just kind of synonymous with the Tyree name. And your Grandma Horde could put a meal on a table just like her mama in no time. Blanche, Mama didn't enjoy it as much as they did, but she did it if she needed to.
Yep.
And so when Grandpa he had scarlet fever when he was a child. So that was why he ended up dying. He was in his 70s, but that was not really young for those days. But his heart got bad. So when he stepped down as Commissioner of Revenue, Uncle Henry, who was Grandpa's son from his first marriage, he ran for Commissioner of Revenue. And that's kind of how the jobs went. If your dad had a political job and you wanted to be in politics, then you would run for his office. And it could be the same name in that job for years. And then Grandpa died somewhere around 1934 or 5. And there were 3,000 people at his funeral. 3,000. And they had it all written up in the paper. And so Aunt Margaret and Grandma stayed on in the house. Aunt Margaret married Uncle Otha right around then. It was the mid-30s, still during the Depression. And it was just meant to be. None of the Tyree boys were real farmers. They all worked somewhere else. And they might have had a little bit of farming, but not enough to make a living. And Uncle Otha, he was just by instinct a consummate farmer. He just had that feel for it. And
My daddy used to speak of Uncle Otha being a real good farmer, that he took that farm, which was pretty well run down, and turned it into a very productive place.
well, it got worn out. They didn't do crop rotation then, and the land was wearing out. Tobacco takes a lot out of it, of nutrients and things. And Uncle Otha embraced moving crops, growing corn one year. The next year, it might be tobacco. The year after that, in that field would be wheat. or alfalfa. He used alfalfa to feed the animals. And Uncle Oath and terracing, fixing it so when it rained, the water just didn't go all downhill in a field.
Yeah.
There would be a level part, and then you'd have this gully that made the water go where you wanted it to. And then there would be another terrace of crops. And so Uncle Otha he really turned that farm around.
Yeah. The pasture above the house and to the right, going up the lane, that field over there, Daddy remembered it being very, very rutted and eroded.
Yeah.
And over the years, Uncle Otha managed to reclaim it, turning it into real good land.
It had rocks and stuff in it.
Yeah.
It was
Yeah.
not, it just didn't do well. Now, the field above the house was always pasture land, as far as I could tell. Because when Mom and them were little, that field above the house between the Rose Lane house and the store, the Mitchell store, the gypsies would come and bring a carnival, and Grandpa would let them put the carnival in that field, and all the kids got to go to the carnival free for the week they were there. So they were always figuring out how to do stuff.
I never heard that. That was cool.
Yeah, Mom and them talked, and of course Grandpa was scared to death of the gypsies doing something to the children. They were never highly thought of, but he made a deal with them, and they came and did that. They had rides and things, but Mom and them used to talk about that.
And they steal the chickens too, right? Claire, they steal the chickens. They steal the chickens too, right?
Oh, they would steal anything. Anything that you couldn't, too big to haul. They were not honest people. And but they said Grandpa sat in a chair and kept an eye on them, because by then he wasn't getting around good. But the farm stayed busy. They raised tobacco until about 1959 or 60, somewhere in there. And then Uncle Otha could make more money with beef cows. And that's what he did. He switched and raised cattle. And he sold his tobacco land. Not the actual land, but everybody was allotted so many acres of tobacco you could raise. The government controlled it. And then when you didn't want to raise tobacco anymore, you could sell your acreage that you could plant to somebody else, and then you got a little income off of that. So that was what they did. They sold all the tobacco acreage, and Uncle Otha started raising cattle. So,
Claire?
uh-huh.
Tell a story about Aunt Margaret and the shotgun.
Oh, well, back in those days, Aunt Margaret, it just blew my mind when she told me women and children were considered chattel, not cattle, but chattel. And they didn't have any more rights than a cow or a pig. And if a man got to drinking and they would have domestic violence incidents and things, Margaret, their door was open. But she told me that one time this lady came, she had several children, like 3 or 4 kids, and they came to Rose Lane Farm. And it was only Grandma and Aunt Margaret. Uncle Otha was not there right then. And they brought in the children and fed everybody. And later on that day, here came the husband, drunk as could be, and mean. And he came in that gate off the driveway to where you see that archway. And he said, you know, he was demanding, I want my wife, I want my children. Aunt Margaret had brought the shotgun with her out of the kitchen. It stayed up over the kitchen. And she brought it out with her. And apparently he did not believe that Aunt Margaret would use it. But she said, you come any closer, she said, I will shoot. And she didn't shoot at him, but she shot at his feet, and he turned around and ran. Because a woman with a shotgun was probably not a good thing. But they kept them there. But eventually, the thing that Aunt Margaret hated was eventually that woman was going to go back because she had nowhere else to go. Your family wouldn't take you back. You got married, you had to live with what you had. And so, but Aunt Margaret was never afraid. We had a cousin who was Aunt Mattie's granddaughter. She married an abuser. And she and her daughter came to the country to hide, all the way from Norfolk to hide. And he showed up. And Aunt Margaret and Uncle Lothar were there. And Uncle Lothar got the shotgun and he said, you're not taking them anywhere. And they stayed until eventually Marion went back home and went back to him. But he was killed in a plane crash at Byrd Field. Larry Petty, Mur Flagg's first husband, he was in the National Guard, and the plane crashed right at the airport, and Larry had to go, and they got the bodies out. And so, but her husband was killed then, and thank goodness she married a wonderful man and had a good life with him. But there were people often, Grandma and them were not going to turn any woman away who came running from abuse. They just weren't going to do that. And but Grandma stayed active right on up until she fell and then had the brain hemorrhage that then she was never able to do. I don't ever remember her calling my name and knowing who I was. She did know I was Helen's daughter, but she never associated my face with me. And so was
Claire,
full.
I remember Grandma Tyree recognizing Daddy. I was a little boy, but I remember we would come in and Grandma would be sitting in a rocking chair in the kitchen next to the stove all the time. And be a big fuss, you know, Aunt Margaret would be, oh, my stroke. And Daddy would walk over to her and she would mention his name. I remember that. I probably was 5 or 6 or 7 years old. I remember those encounters. So she could recall some people.
Every now and then she did. Most of the time she did not know Aunt Margaret. She knew Margaret was her daughter.
Yeah.
And she would talk about Aunt Margaret, but she did not realize it was Aunt Margaret taking care of her.
Yeah.
And but every now and then she would recognize Aunt Margaret and know who it was. But the longer she was sick, the less of that there was.
Yes. She could spell incredibly.
Yep. Did Mike, do you remember ever being in Rose Lane farmhouse?
Yes.
You know where the kitchen was?
Yep.
All right. There was a set of steps behind where the table in the kitchen was. And that was a room up there. That was where Colored Liz and the gentleman who took care of Grandpa, he lived there all of his life. And that was where they slept. They were not married, but that was where they slept. Grandma had gone up there. They would put jars and all kinds of stuff for storage. And there were awful steps, very narrow and no railing. And Grandma would go up there and get stuff. And apparently she had gone up to get something down and get out of that room and came down the steps and fell. And she hit her head. But back then there was no MRI or any of that. And about a week later, she had a cerebral brain hemorrhage, which probably came from a hematoma somewhere. And she was in the hospital. First time I ever remember seeing her, she was in a hospital bed, and my dad lifted me up and I could see in the hospital room. And she was laying in the bed. And I guess it made such an impression on me. I was about 4 to see her like that. And that was the first recollection I have of her. And by the time I was 8 or 9, her mind just kept going and going and going. But she could snap beans, she could shell butter beans, and she and Aunt Mattie could sit in the swing on the front porch downstairs and sing hymns from memory. She knew the words to the hymns. And they never had a piano in that primitive Baptist church. They never had a musical instrument. Everything was done by a person who picked a pitch, and then everybody sang. And so Grandma could sing. She and Aunt Mattie would sing all afternoon. And we thought it was wonderful to see them do that. But my time in the country didn't come until 1958. And that was, my dad was killed in July of 57. And the day after I got out of school in 1958, my mother put me on a bus, and I rode to Roanoke on a Greyhound bus by myself. And Aunt Margaret met me at the bus station, and we got some lunch at a cafeteria. And then she would drive me over in the country, and I stayed all the summer. And the day or two before I would go back to school in the fall, Aunt Margaret would put me on the bus and send me back to Richmond, and Mama would meet me at the bus station. And so that became why I became so close to Aunt Margaret, and was the recipient of so much of what she knew. Otherwise, I wouldn't have known it. Is there anything else, Steve, you want?
Well, I think everybody else on the phone, have y'all kind of gotten enough tonight for what we've covered?
Sure.
Then why don't we call tonight a wrap, and then in a
Okay.
couple of weeks maybe we can get together and talk some more.
Yeah. As I've said, I have no life. I'm on lockdown.
Okay.
So I'm here.
Uncle,
I'm
you
gonna
should
get,
get my
I'm
book.
gonna get your book, Elga.
Yeah, she asked for the,
I'll get your book.
okay.
You're gonna love it. I hope.
Okay. Larry,
All
I'll
right.
talk to you soon.
Yep.
Everybody be good.
All righty. Take care. Love you all.
Love you
Okay.
guys.
Love
Bye-bye.
you too.
Bye.
Bye.
Might have to go upstairs to do it. I'll go upstairs.